The scream came from the basement, but the house was supposed to be empty. Ellie froze mid-step, her hand still gripping the edge of the refrigerator door. The cold air rushed against her legs, but she felt nothing, only the bone-deep realization that something was very, very wrong. She was alone in her grandfather's house, or at least she thought she was. He'd passed away 2 weeks ago, and the place was still wrapped in plastic and grief. She'd come to pack up his belongings before the estate sale, expecting silence, dust, and the occasional spider. But that scream, it was real, and it came from beneath her feet. Her fingers trembled as she pushed the fridge shut and stepped slowly toward the basement door at the end of the hallway. That door had always been locked when she was a child. Grandpa had warned her to stay away. "That part of the house is off limits," he used to say with a half smile that never reached his eyes. She'd listened. Until now. Now she had to know. She reached the door. It was ajar. It hadn't been when she arrived. Ellie's heartbeat pounded, like a war drum, as she gripped the old brass handle and nudged the door fully open. The staircase beyond spiraled into darkness, lit only by the faint flicker of a bulb swinging at the bottom. The scream hadn't returned, but that somehow made it worse. Silence had never been so loud. "Hello?" she called, her voice shaky. "Is someone down there?" No answer. A part of her screamed to run, to get out, call the cops, and let someone else deal with this. But the logical part of her brain, the one that had seen too many documentaries and read too many horror stories, kicked. And if someone is trapped down there, they might not be able to answer. She descended the stairs, one creaking step at a time. The air thickened with every footfall, heavy with dust and something else. Something metallic, the kind of scent that curled in your nostrils and stuck to your throat. At the base of the stairs, the bulb flickered again, revealing a long, low-ceilinged hallway Ellie had never seen before. It stretched deeper than she thought the house should allow, lined with stone walls and old wooden doors set at intervals like cells. She whispered to herself, "What the hell is this place?" A sudden bang came from the third door on the left. Ellie jumped, heart leaping into her throat. She inched toward it. There was no lock, only a rusted handle. With a breath she didn't realize she was holding, she turned it. The door creaked open. Slowly, the room inside was small, windowless, and someone was sitting in the far corner, a man, shirtless, filthy, hunched over. His arms were wrapped around his knees, his face hidden behind matted hair. When the door opened, he didn't react. "Sir?" Ellie asked, stepping inside. "Are you okay?" Still nothing. She stepped closer. The man's voice was barely a whisper. "Close it, please, before she knows you're here." Ellie's skin went ice cold. Before, who knows? But he wouldn't. Say more. He just kept repeating, "Close the door, she hears everything down here." A loud creak behind Ellie made her spin. Another door, this one slamming shut by itself. And then, footsteps, not hers, not the man's, someone else, coming down the hallway, slow, deliberate. "Who's there?" Ellie called, backing into the room. The man whimpered. It's too late. She's awake now. Suddenly, all the lights in the hallway went out, total darkness. Ellie slammed the door shut and turned the lock. If only to buy a few seconds, she turned back to the man. "You need help. I'll get you out of here." He laughed bitterly. "No one gets out. You think I haven't? I tried. That door's not your way out. It's a trap." She backed away from him, her mind racing. "Who is she?" Ellie whispered. He looked up at her for the first time. His eyes were clouded, gray, like a dead man walking. She calls herself Mother. And this house, it's hers now. Upstairs, Ellie's phone rang in the kitchen. She never heard it. Downstairs, something moved behind the walls, scraping, crawling, the kind of sound that made you feel watched, hunted. And then a knock from inside the room. Not the door, the floor. The man looked at Ellie. "That's her other door. You shouldn't have come here alone." Suddenly, part of the floor collapsed inward, like a trap door opening in reverse. and Ellie saw something move beneath it. Pale hands, too long, too many fingers. She screamed. The man didn't move. The hands gripped the edge of the hole and a face began to emerge, not quite human, but close enough to pass in shadows. And then Ellie ran. She shoved open the door, sprinted down the hallway, slammed her shoulder into the stairs, and behind her, the voice called out, "Ellie, you came back just like he did." She made it to the kitchen and bolted the basement door behind her. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she called 911. But when the police arrived, the basement door was nailed shut from the inside, and there was no hallway, no cells, no man. Just a pile of dust and an old locked trunk in the corner. Inside it, a photo of her grandfather, and on the back, written in faded ink, "Forgive me, Eleanor. I tried to bury her, but she always finds a way out." Ellie hadn't slept since the incident. Not really. Every time her eyes drifted shut, she heard this voice whispering her name from beneath the floorboards. "Ellie, you came back." And now that she knew the basement wasn't just an unfinished slab of concrete and cobwebs, now that she'd seen the hallway, the cells, and that thing clawing its way out, she couldn't stop thinking about one thing. Her grandfather knew. He'd known all along. The photo in the trunk, the message scrawled in shaky ink. "Forgive me, Eleanor. I tried to bury her." Bury who? She needed answers. That morning, she returned to the house, not out of bravery, but because she felt like something inside her had already snapped. Fear wasn't useful anymore, not when the truth was this close. The local police had already brushed her off. Old houses settle strangely, they said. Basement might have collapsed. Trunks probably just sentimental. They didn't send anyone to investigate, so she came back alone, armed with a flashlight, gloves, a crowbar, and her phone recording everything. As she stood before the basement door again, still sealed shut, the nails pounded in from inside, she took a deep breath. This time, she was ready. She pried the boards loose one by one. Behind them, the door was no longer even closed. It hung ajar, revealing only shadows. The air that drifted up from below was stale and cold, but it wasn't just air, it carried something else. A humming sound, soft, childlike, a lullaby. Ellie descended slowly, her flashlight beam trembling. The bottom, her light swept across concrete walls, and that was it. No hallway, no cells, no flickering bulb, just a dusty, unfinished basement, empty. Exactly what the police had described. Except the dust wasn't undisturbed. Footprints trailed across the floor, small ones, barefoot, and they led to the trunk she'd seen before. Now, sitting against the far wall, Ellie approached it with shaking hands. It looked like it hadn't been moved in years, but the footprints were fresh. She opened it again. The photo of her grandfather was still inside. But this time, there was something new beneath it. A stack of letters, old, yellowed, wrapped in ribbon. She untied the bundle and opened the first one. June 3rd, 1954, to whoever finds this. If you're reading this, it means she's awake again, and it's already too late. Her name was Margaret once, but that's not who she is anymore. She was my sister, my twin, and I made the mistake of locking her down there instead of ending it when I had the chance. Ellie's throat tightened. She turned the page. We were 7 when the voices started. She said Mother was talking to her through the walls, said she told her secrets, terrible ones. She killed our cat first, said Mother needed it for the trade. Then the neighbor boy went missing. Our parents thought she was sick. They tried doctors, priests, nothing helped. Eventually, they locked her in the basement. And they never let her out, but she didn't die down there. She became something else. Ellie's eyes stung. The rest of the letter was unreadable, smeared with what looked like blood or ink. She flipped to another one. November 11th, 1961, Margaret. Doesn't age. I check the door every year. She's still there, still whispering, still waiting, and every time someone moves into the house, someone disappears. I buried the hallway, bricked it over. I even poured new concrete. But she finds a way through. She knows their names before they arrive. She calls to them, and if they answer, she keeps them. Ellie dropped the letter. Her hands were trembling too hard to read. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. One notification, video message, no sender. She hesitated, then opened it. The screen flickered to life. Grainy footage, shot in total darkness. At first, she thought it was an error, but then the image stabilized. It was her, standing in the basement from behind, holding a flashlight, just like now. And something behind her. Moving, she spun around, heart hammering, but there was nothing there. Back to the video. The camera zoomed in. Behind her silhouette, a figure crept from the shadows, pale and hunched, its limbs unnaturally long, its head tilting side to side. Like a curious child, the screen went black. Then a single message appeared on her phone. "She remembers you." Ellie's breath caught. She backed away from the trunk, heart racing, eyes scanning the empty corners of the basement. And that's when she saw it. A faint outline on the far wall, like a seam in the concrete. A doorway that had been sealed and painted over. She ran her hand along the surface. It felt uneven. The bricks were newer than the rest of the basement. The hallway wasn't gone. It was buried, just like her grandfather said. But Ellie wasn't. Like him, she wouldn't just seal it up and hope it stayed hidden. She ran upstairs, grabbed a hammer and chisel, and returned. Bit by bit, she chipped away the plaster. Beneath it, cinder blocks. Behind that, stone, and beneath that, hollow. She tapped again. The sound echoed. She tore through the wall with frantic hands until a section collapsed inward, revealing the same hallway from before, damp, cold, lined with doors, and at the end a mirror, not a door. Not a passage, a full-length ornate mirror, out of place in the filth and stone. It glowed faintly. Humming. Ellie stepped inside. The temperature dropped instantly. The hallway was exactly as she remembered. Only now, every door was open, empty. Except, only the third door on the left, the one the man had been inside. She moved to it. The room was dark, but on the wall, scratched into stone, was a name, Margaret, and beneath it, hundreds, maybe thousands, of fingernail marks. Like someone had been clawing for decades. Ellie turned to leave, but the hallway behind her had changed. The doors were gone. The walls were smooth. She wasn't in the hallway anymore. She was standing in a room, and the mirror was in front of her. Again, only this time, her reflection was wrong. It stared back but didn't move when she did. Instead, it smiled and whispered, "You opened the door. Now you take my place." Ellie screamed. She reached for the mirror, but her hands went through it, cold, liquid, like ice water. The figure inside stepped forward, her, but not. Same eyes, same hair, but twisted, hollow, like something had worn her face. The reflection stepped out, and Ellie was pulled in. The world went black. Upstairs, in the quiet house, the basement door slowly creaked shut on its own. And then, footsteps, soft, barefoot. Someone walked up the stairs. She looked like Ellie. She held Ellie's phone, wore Ellie's clothes, but the smile she wore wasn't Ellie's at all. Ellie screamed, but no sound came out. Everything was cold, not freezing, but wrong, like the temperature inside a dead body. She could feel her heart pounding, her lungs gasping for air, but none of it felt real. She blinked, and the mirror world came into focus. It looked exactly like the hallway she'd just been in, stone, damp, lit by the same flickering bulb overhead. But here, everything was reversed, like a photograph flipped backwards. The doors were on the wrong side. Her footsteps echoed too long, like the sound didn't want to leave. And the worst part, the mirror was gone, no way out. Her breath caught in her throat. "Hello?" she whispered. Her voice bounced back at her. But it wasn't her voice. It was distorted, like a child mocking her. "Hello? Hello? Oh!" She stepped forward, scanning each door. Unlike before, they were all closed again, except one. At the end of the corridor, barely visible in the dim light, stood a door that looked ancient. Black wood, rusted handle, a single word carved across it: remember. She didn't want to go toward it, but something inside her, curiosity, fear, instinct, pulled her forward. When she pushed it open, she didn't find another prison cell. She found a bedroom, hers, from when she was 7 years old. Same stuffed bear, same pink curtains, same broken ballerina lamp. But on the bed sat a girl, her back to Ellie, long tangled black hair spilling over her shoulders. She wore a nightgown stained with something dark. The girl turned slowly. It was Ellie, as a child. But her eyes were missing. Hollow sockets stared straight ahead. Ellie stumbled back. "What is this?" The girl's mouth moved. No sound came. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand and pointed to the wall. Ellie turned. Photos. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Tacked to the peeling wallpaper with rusty pins. Every photo showed a different person standing in front of the mirror at the end of the hallway. Some men, some women, all terrified. At the bottom of each photo was a name, and under those, a word. Replaced. She stepped closer. Her fingers grazed one of the photos. It was her, taken from behind. Just like the video she got on her phone. Same flashlight, same posture, same fear. But this photo had no name under it, only a blank tag. Waiting. Suddenly, she heard footsteps from the hallway, heavy, barefoot, coming closer. She spun toward the open, toward nothing. Then faintly a hum, soft, childlike, a lullaby she hadn't heard since she was a girl. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Close your eyes and fall deep. The girl on the bed whispered, "She's coming." Ellie backed away from the room, but the hallway outside had changed again. Now it was filled with mirrors, lined from floor to ceiling, each one showing a different scene. In one, she saw the woman who had screamed for help in the basement, the one Ellie tried to save. In another, a man hammering at a concrete wall with bloodied fists. In the last one, the worst one, she saw herself, but not here. Upstairs, in the house, wearing her skin. She was smiling at Ellie's reflection in the hallway mirror. Then, slowly, she turned to the side and lifted a knife. She was no longer alone up there. Someone else had entered the house, and she was going to make sure they didn't leave. Ellie's chest tightened. If she didn't get out soon, someone else would take her place in here, just like she had taken someone else's. She ran, mirror after mirror, blurred by as she sprinted through the hallway. But it wasn't endless. It ended in a room. And in the center of that room was Margaret. The creature wasn't fully human anymore. Her skin was pale gray, her hair matted in clumps, and her mouth was full of teeth, far too many for a normal human face. But her eyes, they were Ellie's eyes, the eyes from the girl on the bed. "I waited for you," Margaret said in a voice that made the walls shake. Ellie stood frozen. "You're not the first, but you'll be the last," she promised. "Who?" Ellie choked. Margaret smiled. "The one upstairs." "You mean her? The thing pretending to be me?" "She wears you better than you wore yourself," Margaret hissed. "She'll make them forget you ever existed. And when she's done, she'll bring someone new." Ellie lunged for the door, but Margaret didn't chase her. She only whispered one last thing. "Ask her what she traded for your name." Upstairs, Sam had only come to check on Ellie. She hadn't answered any calls in 2 days. He was used to her getting caught up in her obsession with the old house, but this was different. The front door was unlocked. The place felt off the moment he walked in. The air was too still, like the house was holding its breath. Then Ellie appeared, at the top of the stairs, smiling. "Hey," she said sweetly. "I was wondering when you'd come." Sam blinked. "Are you okay? You look tired," she laughed. "I've just been working, cleaning up the place." He followed her in. She offered him coffee. Everything seemed normal until he saw the scratches on her wrists, faint red, like something had been trying to get out, and then her reflection in the hallway mirror didn't blink when she did. He froze. "Ellie," he said slowly, "when's the last time you slept?" She turned to him, and her eyes shifted, just for a second, from brown to pure bottomless black. Sam backed away. "What did you do with her?" Ellie smiled. "She gave me her name, and I gave her peace." Down below, Ellie stood in front of the final mirror again. This time it shimmered like it was watching her. She had one chance. If someone upstairs saw through the lie, if they could say her name out loud, it might pull her back. So she screamed again and again, "Say my name, say my name." Upstairs, Sam grabbed his phone, stumbling backward. "Ellie, what are you?" The lights flickered, the house groaned, the figure posing as Ellie stepped forward, her skin cracking like porcelain. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. Then the mirror behind her exploded. From the shards, a voice echoed, faint, distant. "Sam, please, say my name." He turned to the reflection. In it, he saw the real Ellie, bloody, bruised, trapped behind glass. He didn't hesitate. "Ellie!" The wall shook. The fake Ellie screamed as her body began to collapse inward, her features melting like wax. The house roared. The mirror trembled. Then boom, a shockwave of light, and everything went still. 6 hours later, Ellie sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the rising sun. Sam sat beside her. "You were in there," he whispered. Ellie nodded. "Longer than it felt. What was it?" She didn't answer for a long time. Then finally, something that feeds on what we forget. Names, faces, identity. She looked at him. "But you remembered me. That saved me." He reached for her hand. "Let's burn that house to the ground." But Ellie didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the mirror across the street, in the neighbor's front window. It shimmered, and inside it, a pale hand pressed gently against the glass. The mirror across the street never stopped shimmering, even when Ellie shut the curtains, even when she unplugged every reflective surface in the house, even when Sam stayed with her every night to make sure she didn't slip back into that other world. Something had followed her back. It wasn't in the house, it was inside her. 1 week later. "Something's wrong," she whispered, staring at her reflection in the dark TV screen. It didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't move unless she moved first. Sam had been trying to keep her calm, taking her to doctors, sleeping with the lights on, triple checking. Locks, but Ellie couldn't pretend. She wasn't the same person anymore, and worst of all, sometimes she heard two voices in her head when she spoke. One that sounded like her, and one that whispered, "You never should have come back." The basement door. She avoided it for days, but the nightmares only got worse. In her sleep, she'd wake up standing in front of it, hand on the doorknob. Last night, she'd even scratched something into the wood. "Let me in, or I'll take someone else." So now, early in the morning with Sam out getting groceries, Ellie stood at the top of the stairs, facing what she thought she'd escaped. The basement looked the same, but the moment she stepped down, it was colder, like the floor had been replaced by something dead and ancient. Halfway down, she paused. There was music, a lullaby, the same one the eyeless girl had hummed in the mirror world. "Go to sleep, go to sleep. Close your eyes and fall deep." Ellie gripped the railing, knuckles white. Then the music stopped and a voice echoed up. From below, "You took her name, but you never knew who she really was." The hidden room, she found the wall again, the one with the faint outline of a sealed door. It wasn't concrete anymore. It was wood, soaked with something black and sticky. Handprint stained the middle, small, like a child's. Ellie pressed her fingers to it. Click! The wall gave way. Inside, a narrow staircase leading even deeper underground. She descended, flashlight trembling. The original mirror room, it was all still there. The photo-covered walls, the bed, the eyeless girl. But now, there were two new photos pinned to the wall. One of Sam, taken from the front yard that morning, one of her, but her eyes had been scratched out. Ellie gasped, and behind her, the eyeless girl moved. "You took her name," the girl said in a hollow voice. "But you never asked why it was free." "I don't understand," Ellie whispered. "You were just like the others, curious, brave, but selfish." Ellie stepped back, heart pounding. "Who are you?" The girl raised a shaking hand and pointed to the wall. Ellie turned and for the first time noticed a burned document framed behind the glass. She wiped away the soot. It was a birth certificate. The name on it, Margaret Eleanor Dean. Her hands trembled. "No, that's my name." The girl's mouth twitched. "Not anymore." The trade memories rushed back, disjointed, painful, wrong. She remembered her mother's voice telling her she was a miracle baby. She remembered how her parents always kept her away from mirrors as a child, and how, when she was 7, she woke up screaming about a woman standing in the reflection, but they always said she just had an overactive imagination. Now she knew the truth. She had never been born. She had been claimed. The real Margaret, this girl, this ghost, had made a trade with something in the mirror for escape, for peace. In return, that thing took her identity, her memories, her place in the world, and gave them to someone else. Ellie, betrayal in the bloodline, footsteps echoed down the stairs. Sam? No, her mother. Ellie turned, stunned. "Mom?" She hadn't seen her in years. They hadn't spoken since the funeral. Her mother's face was pale, eyes red, voice shaking. "I told your father it wouldn't last, that the mirror wouldn't. I keep her quiet forever." Ellie froze. "You knew." "I begged them not to do it," her mother whispered. "But after Margaret disappeared, the grief broke us. Then that woman showed up with the offer." "What offer?" Her mother's voice cracked. "A second chance, a new daughter in exchange for never speaking of the first." Ellie felt the world collapse around her. She wasn't just cursed, she was stolen. "You let them erase her," Ellie whispered. Her mother's eyes flooded with tears. "We didn't understand what we were doing, and by the time we realized, you were already here, already calling me Mom." Ellie backed toward the wall. The girl Margaret stood silently between them. Ellie fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Margaret stepped closer, and for the first time she smiled. "Then prove it." The final mirror. The wall shifted. A mirror slid out from the stone, tall, cracked, humming with energy. Inside it, 2 reflections, one of Ellie, one of Margaret. Both identical. The girl turned to Ellie. "One of us has to go back." "I can't. Just vanish. You already did. If I give this up, what happens to me?" Margaret's voice was calm, gentle. "You live, just not as her." Ellie stared into the mirror. She saw herself. But for the first time, she didn't know who she was looking at. Upstairs again, Sam found the basement door open when he returned. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then Ellie appeared at the top of the stairs, but not the Ellie he knew. Her smile was sad, her eyes older. She said softly, "I remember now, everything." Sam frowned. "Where's the other you?" "She's free." He tilted his head. "Free where?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know. Later that night, Sam placed a single photo on the mantel. It was one of Ellie and him, taken last summer, smiling at a lake. Underneath it he wrote, "Margaret Eleanor Dean." She found her name, and she gave it back. Downstairs, the basement door stayed shut, but if you listened closely, every so often in the silence, you could still hear 2 voices humming the same lullaby. Ellie, no, Margaret now, had been different ever since that day. In the basement, quieter, kinder, but also heavier, like she carried someone else's grief along with her own. Sam noticed the change most. She spoke less, but listened more. She flinched at her own reflection, and sometimes, when she passed by the mirror in the hallway, her hand would twitch as if it wanted to reach through it, or maybe stop something from coming out. But none of that compared to what happened the night the stranger showed up. The doorbell that shouldn't have rung. They lived at the edge of town. Hardly anyone visited. Sam's friends stayed away now, out of unease they couldn't explain. Margaret hadn't seen her mother since the night in the basement. So when the doorbell rang at 11:57 p.m., they both froze. Sam went to answer. Margaret stood back, pulse racing. The porch light flickered, then he opened the door. A man stood there, tall, mid-60s, sharp green eyes that somehow looked too young for his age. He wore a long brown coat and held an envelope. "I'm looking for Margaret Eleanor Dean." Margaret stepped forward. The man smiled. "You were stolen from me." A name that didn't belong to him. They sat in silence around the kitchen table. The man placed the envelope between them, unopened. "I was her father." "Her. Before the trade," he said calmly. "Before they took her and replaced her with, well, you." Margaret stiffened. Sam clenched his fists. The man held up a hand. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to show you something. Then you can decide what to do." He slid the envelope toward her. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single black and white photograph. It showed a baby girl, big eyes, curly hair, wrapped in a hospital blanket. But behind her was a mirror, and in the reflection, another baby, identical but screaming. Margaret's voice cracked. "What is this?" The man leaned in. "It's the moment the trade began. You were born in light. She was born in the dark. They took you because your soul was clean. But now that she's been released, the mirror wants balance again. The mirror has a debt." He pulled out an old book, worn, leather-bound, full of strange ink sketches. It looked ancient. "The mirror never lets go of a soul without payment," the man said. "Payment?" Sam asked. The man turned a page. A symbol, stared up at them, sharp angles, a circle, and two mirrored faces. "One of you is still tethered. It's not over. That basement was just a doorway. The real trap is deeper. It's called the cellar of borrowed names. And once a soul is taken there, it becomes currency." Margaret's chest tightened. "You mean she's not free?" The man shook his head. "She bought you time, but not freedom." The cell door appears. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. She kept hearing the lullaby again, but now it was coming from beneath the basement, lower than she'd ever gone. She rose. Quietly, Sam stirred. "Where are you going?" She didn't lie. "I'm going to pay her debt." He sat up, alarmed. "Margaret, you already gave everything." She turned to him, trembling. "Not everything. She died for me. It's time I live for her." Below, the basement, the stranger's book had a map. She followed it, down the main stairs, past the mirror room. Behind the far wall, there was no door, just a blank concrete slab. But when Margaret touched it, her fingers burned. Symbols appeared in glowing red ink. The wall cracked, and a new tunnel opened, spiraling deep into the earth. It smelled of rot and forgotten names. The cellar of borrowed names. It was like a graveyard, but without graves. Shelves stretched for miles, each holding dusty name tags pinned like butterflies. Some had blood on them, some whispered, and all were lit by a cold blue glow from above. Margaret stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind her. She wasn't alone. The collector figure emerged, twisted and skeletal but cloaked in mirrors. Its face changed with every step. Child, woman, man, monster. It was everyone and no one. "You've come to pay," it rasped. Margaret stood firm. "I came to repay." The creature tilted its head. "You stole a name, gained a life. It's ours now." "I didn't steal anything," she said. "You took her, you broke her, and we offered you freedom. You lived." Margaret took out the baby photo, held it up like a shield. She didn't. "And now I want to give it back," the collector hissed. "You would trade yourself?" She nodded. "Then choose." The mirror. Test a dozen mirrors blinked into existence. Each one reflected a different version of her. One crying, one angry, one smiling with blood on her hands, one with hollow eyes, one normal. The collector pointed to them. "One is the truth. The others are lies. Step through the right one, and she will be freed. Choose wrong, and you'll be trapped in her place, forever." Margaret's breath caught. She studied them, listened, and then she saw it. One reflection, the only one with a tear in its eye, not running from fear, but toward love. She stepped into it. The real trade pain exploded through her. Her body felt like it was shattering. The mirror world yanked her in, showing her flashes of Margaret's life, her laughter, her silence in the basement, the darkness when no one came, then light. She woke up on the basement floor, gasping. Sam was beside her, the stranger gone, but in the mirror behind them, a new girl stood. Not eyeless, not broken, just free. She smiled once, then faded. A letter on the table back. Upstairs, a letter waited for Margaret. It had her handwriting, but she hadn't written it. It read, "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for choosing me. You don't have to be me anymore. You can be you now. Margaret." Sam hugged her from behind. "Who are you now?" he whispered. She smiled, tears falling. "I don't know, but for the first time, I think I'm real." The mirror in the basement was gone, not broken, not moved, gone. Just a smear of soot on the wall where it had once hung like a silent god, watching, judging, stealing. Margaret stared at the empty space, fingers trembling. Sam stood a few steps behind, clutching the letter they'd found under her pillow. "If you're reading this," it said, "then I've remembered everything, and I know where I came from, but I don't know if I'll come back." She hadn't written it, but it was in her handwriting, and it told them exactly what to do next. The map. Under the floorboards, beneath the basement's dusty floorboards, Sam found it, folded into a bone-dry crack that hadn't been visible before. An old map, but this time it wasn't of the cellar or the house or the mirror realm. It was of the town, except every street had two names, one written in ink, one scratched in blood. Sam unfolded it slowly. The inked names were familiar: Maple Avenue, Brookside Lane, Cinder Drive. But the blood names were people. Real people. Margaret leaned closer. Look, there it was. Her name, Margaret Eleanor Dean, crossed out underneath. Replica 12B. Sam swallowed hard. "What is this?" She turned the map over. There was one message scribbled in messy, urgent handwriting. "This town is a reflection. We are all echoes of someone else. Find the source. Break the mirror." A town that shouldn't exist. It was raining as they drove toward the edge of town, but the rain never hit the windshield. It fell, then vanished just before touching the glass, as if something refused to let it fall through. Margaret looked at the houses as they passed, windows where people should be, but no faces, just shadows. They turned onto a dead-end street, hollow gate. The blood map called it Origin Spine. There, between two rotting trees, stood a forgotten chapel, its doors chained shut, its windows painted black. But at the base of the chapel, partly buried in earth, was a trapdoor. The forgotten chapel. Sam wrenched the chains loose. Margaret opened the trapdoor. A rush of cold air and whispers poured out like breath from a buried throat. They descended. The tunnel was older than the house, older than the town. Carved, by hand, with symbols etched into every wall. Symbols that pulsed faintly when Margaret passed. She didn't need the map anymore. She just knew. At the tunnel's end was a mirror, the original, the first. It was enormous, at least 10 feet tall, framed in twisted wood that looked like it had grown from screams. Sam stopped her. "What happens if you go through?" Margaret touched The glass, I don't go through, she said softly. It comes out. The original, the mirror, flickered, and then the real Margaret stepped out. Not a reflection, not a replica. The first version of her, older, colder, with eyes full of memories no one should carry. Sam gasped. Margaret stepped back. The original Margaret looked at her with something between pity and rage. "You've lived my life," she said, voice like cracked glass. "You've taken my name, my grief, my love. I never asked to," Margaret said. "No, but you survived it better." The original raised her hand. The air warped. Sam doubled over in pain, and from behind him, other versions of Margaret began to crawl from the walls, the echoes of her each. One wore a different emotion like a mask. One was laughing uncontrollably. One was sobbing blood. One had no eyes. One had no mouth. One looked exactly like the current Margaret, except she was slowly turning into glass. They circled her, whispering, "You don't belong. You weren't meant to stay. She died for you. Trade, trade, trade." Margaret looked to Sam. "I can end it," she whispered, "but I need your help." The shatter ritual. She remembered the book the stranger had shown her. The ritual, the one thing the mirror feared. She took out the locket around her neck, the one her mother had given her, back before everything. Inside it, a piece of the original, a mirror stolen from the basement before it vanished. Sam lit the match. Margaret placed the shard in her palm and spoke the words burned into her dreams. "If I am her and she is me, let now be what should never be. Mirror's birth and mirror's death, I give this name my final breath." The collapse, the shard, melted into her skin. The mirror screamed. All the versions of her began to break, like puppets dropped mid-performance. The original Margaret fell to her knees, eyes wide. "No, you don't understand. If you destroy the mirror, you destroy the whole town." Margaret shook her head. "I'm not destroying it. I'm absorbing it." And with that, she stepped into the mirror. The chapel shook. The walls cracked, and then silence. The after Sam awoke outside the chapel ruins, alone, no mirror, no Margaret, just ash and glass dust where the trapdoor had been. He called her name. No answer. For weeks he searched. The map vanished. The town began to change. Streets realigned. People returned, as if waking up from a long, quiet coma. No one remembered the mirror, except Sam. And one day, weeks later, he found a letter tucked into his coat. It was her handwriting. "Dear Sam, I didn't die. I became what she couldn't. I'm still in the mirror, but now I own it. I see you, I love you, and when you need me most, I'll come back." Final scene. Years later, Sam stood in their old house. He had a daughter now. She looked just like Margaret. And one day, while playing hide and seek, she disappeared into the basement. He ran down. She was standing in front of a new mirror that had never been there before, smiling. "Daddy," she whispered. "A lady in the mirror says hi." Sam froze, then smiled through the tears. "Tell her I miss her." The girl looked into the mirror, then back at him. "She says she never left." The end.